I love Brian's notion about it being a gift from God to change us, to heal us. Don't just haste into it. Don't take it too fast. First, do your personal research and explore a lot what is resonating with you and kind of follow your intuition. Then the third time, I didn't want to take Ibogaine hydrochloride anymore, and I did something which people usually say you shouldn't do, is I ordered a large batch of Iboga root bark to my home and took it alone at home, which
without a sitter, right? Without the
facilitator. No, you shouldn't do this somehow. I thought that I know how I react because I had my first 2 sessions with a sitter. So I thought, okay, let's order just some Iboga root bark and do it home alone. In Bwiti they say the Iboga plant, the Iboga shrub, is just the gate into the forest. So if you take the Iboga, you see all the different forest spirits, you see how to live in harmony, in symbiosis with the forest.
Hello all beautiful, amazing people over this magical planet. My name is Robert Kainis and this is another Beyond the Courage podcast. Today we have a really superbly fascinating guest and also amazing subject. We'll be talking about probably the most powerful and promising molecule plant on this planet. Our guest today is Tobias Erny from the Iboga Therapy Alliance. How you doing, Tobias, today?
Hi, thank you very much for your invitation. I'm great. I hope you do so likewise.
We had a very fascinating private conversation before we started recording. There's so many things I would like to ask you about. At the beginning, I would like to ask you a very fundamental and I think very important question. What is Iboga and Ibogaine, and how these amazing plants, molecules, may help average person who is struggling with anxiety, depression, or some kind of addiction?
So, Ibogaine and Iboga are 2 different things. Also, they are often used as the same. Ibogaine is the main active alkaloid of a plant whose full name is Tabernante Iboga, originating from West Equatorial Africa. The plant itself, the Tabernante Iboga shrub, is a 1 to 2 meter tall shrub, in rare cases also much bigger, which contains plethora, like a whole galaxy of different alkaloids. And Ibogaine is like the main active alkaloid of them. And basically Ibogaine is used to interrupt drug addiction. That's how it's made a name in the late 60s. Or from the 60s to now in the Western world, because you can basically interrupt especially opiate addiction rather painlessly and relatively easy, still not super easy, but compared to a common opiate withdrawal, the treatment with Iboga is much more pleasant than cold turkey, so to say. And then now Ibogaine is being researched for a whole series of different possible applications. So, as you said, anxiety, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress syndrome, depression. Also, some people treat bulimia with it, or just a general lack of spiritual connection to the self, to the higher world, so to say. For this, Iboga and Ibogaine are pretty interesting, and for us now one of the most interesting applications is the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases, especially Parkinson's disease, but also some colleagues are working on MS, multiple sclerosis treatment, or neuropathic pain treatment. So it's a really interesting molecule, and its possible applications are pretty broad, it's a wide spectrum that you could treat with.
Yeah, it's such an amazing and very broad topic. So you represent the Global Iboga Therapy Alliance, which we may call GITA, right? Yeah. Would you be so kind and tell us how your journey with GITA started, and what are the origins of GITA, and what is the mission and the vision of this organization?
GITA is basically a not-for-profit organization dedicated to supporting the sacramental therapeutic uses of Iboga, as well as all its alkaloids and their analogs through sustainability initiatives, scientific research, education, and also advocacy. GITA was founded 2009, 2010 from a group of dedicated researchers, therapists, Iboga practitioners. Also Robert Lotzov, let's say the great-grandfather of the Iboga movement in the Western world, was involved, and his wife Norma is still coming to our meetings. And basically, GITA is dedicated to creating a world in which Iboga develops sustainably and equitably, where the sacramental and therapeutic uses and the potential of Iboga as well as Ibogaine have been explored, researched, and that everybody who wants to get safe access and a safe treatment with Iboga can do so. So we work on policies, we work in the therapy field, so that different practitioners meet and exchange their safety protocols and their findings to educate the different providers, but also help people who are seeking help with Iboga.
Awesome. And you also shared, when we spoke privately, your story, how you got into this universe of Iboga, Ibogaine. Would you be so kind and share with our audience, because it's a really amazing and touchy story?
Sure. Yeah. In the beginning of the millennium, early 2000s, I was working in the chemical pharmaceutical industry of Basel in Switzerland and had access to a lot of different substances. And at some point I developed an opiate habit. But I was already a quite interested psychonaut and explorer. We tried a lot of different substances. When my opiate habit got a bit out of hand, I remembered that 2001 I first read about Ibogaine. And then in 2003 to 2004 my opiate habit started to get really out of hand. And then 2005 I took Ibogaine hydrochloride to treat my opiate addiction. And from there on, it just was so fascinating what was happening there, that even after having kicked off the opiates, I was still super fascinated with this plant, and I helped friends, and then I helped friends of friends, and somehow got into research with Iboga. A close friend, the publisher of Albert Hoffmann in the German-speaking realm, asked me then at some point, I think it was 2009 to 2010, or a bit later, when he said, hey, you have some knowledge, you have a background, and you have the experience, don't you want to write a book about Iboga? So I then wrote the German standard reference on Iboga, which was published 2017, I guess. And yeah, it basically, without me wanting it to become my main mission in life, it somehow evolved into that.
Do you remember how this first session, that first experience with Ibogaine looked, and what happened during that session? We can call it a session or experience, right? So basically, that one experience cure your opioid addiction, just like that?
It was not just one session. Basically, in the first session, it was a very personal autobiographic session, where a lot of my emotional garbage, a lot of the things that I would not want to look at, but that were buried there, were brought up to the surface. And at the beginning, I was not really understanding what this substance was doing. So it was a quite challenging experience, because I was somehow confronted with all my dark sides that I didn't knew that were there. Then after the session, I was clean for about 3/4 of a year, like some month, 9 months or so. But then I relapsed in Switzerland, where I was living at that time. There are these places where junkies, drug addicts can gather and exchange drugs, and they get needles for free and everything. If they stay in this enclosed area, police won't do anything to them, which is really
Wow, that's
nice
very
because
interesting.
they are being taken care for, and they whoever wants to live their addiction in that way is being cared in a way that they can live their addiction in a healthy way somehow, as healthy as possible.
Wow,
But
yeah, that's a contradiction.
yeah, and this area was basically on my way to work. So every day I would pass twice all these old people that I knew. So basically I relapsed after a while. And then
Hmm.
after my first relapse, I took again Ibogaine. I was again clean for a while. But walking past this area, I again relapsed. And then I moved to another town where I also changed my social circles. Did Iboga then, not Ibogaine. And from that moment on, it basically stayed much, much better for way longer. Then it was more of an in-depth healing. But my first Ibogaine session was something that I think I needed the second session some 10, 12 months later to understand the first session. And then subsequently, the first Iboga session, not Ibogaine hydrochloride session, gave a whole new perspective on the two previous sessions. So it was not this often kind of romantically explained one time you take something and everything is good. It wasn't this magic bullet for me, but what was happening is brought certain character traits of myself to the surface, where I started to understand why I was developing this heroin addiction, which parts of myself I didn't like, and why I numbed myself, why I was running away from myself. So after my first Iboga session, Ibogaine session, besides being then clean for several months, I also decided to not lie, because as having a heroin habit and being around drug addicts, even so I was a functioning addict, I still was not really inclined to tell the truth always. So I realized, hey, I'm not just lying to myself, but I'm also lying to others, and I don't want this anymore. So I started there was this little switch from the first Ibogaine session where I wanted to become more honest um, to myself and to others. And being more honest to myself implied that I also look at aspects of myself that I don't like and started to work on them. So I think the first Ibogaine session was like the little stone the little thing that get the avalanche slowly rolling, avalanche of change, so to say. Um, yeah, this then brought me into the whole Iboga space, which was a super life changing and fascinating experience.
So, from your personal perspective, how would you describe the differences between how Ibogaine, which is Iboga alkaloid, works on us versus full spectrum Iboga?
So the
Uh,
first two Ibogaine sessions. So, sorry, you wanted to say something?
because it's also there's a huge difference in how long the session is lasting. Ibogaine is usually like 12 hours, and Iboga is close to 36. Is
Yeah,
that correct from your experience? Or?
yeah. The total alkali spectrum where Iboga is much more stretched out. So the Ibogaine hydrochloride showed me a lot of autobiographic things and showed me a lot of stuff where like let's call it intra psychological garbage that came up, or character traits. In the first two sessions, that was perfect for my start, or the start of my healing journey. then the third time, I didn't want to take ibogaine hydrochloride anymore, and I did something which people usually say you shouldn't do, is I ordered a large batch of Iboga root bark to my home and took it alone at home. Which
Wow,
is,
without a sitter, right? Without the
no,
facilitator?
you shouldn't do this somehow. I thought that I know how I react because I had my first 2 sessions with a sitter. So I thought, okay, let's order just some Iboga root bark and do it home alone. So please don't try this at home because it's
Yes,
not
please.
good to do it that way. But I did at that time. And it was one of the most fascinating experiences because I was lying there in my bed and I expected something like an ibogaine hydrochloride trip, which I somehow knew. But this was way different. Like it opened up a multi-dimensional world where all of a sudden in my room, in the middle, in front of my bed, there was this entity being beamed into my room. It was like Star Trek or something. Like all of a sudden out of nothing this entity was standing there. It looked a bit like Groot from Guardian of the Galaxy, you know, this tree, this living tree being.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very popular right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked a bit like Groot, and at first I was pretty scared, like how does this being come here and what is it doing in my room? But it kind of tried to soothe me, to convey it telepathically to me, hey, I'm this plant spirit of the plant you just took, and I'm there to help you. Don't worry too much. And then I looked down at my body, and I saw all these energetic circuits, you know, like the chakras, the nadis, or this chi channels, the prana channels that all these Eastern philosophies talk about. And I saw some of them being like cut and like two cut electric cables that are supposed to be connected but are not connected were flowing around there, and I had this really weird energetic feeling. And then this plant spirit being came and reached with his arms into my body. At first I was super scared, but the moment this arms reached my body, this really beautiful benevolent energy was flowing
Wow.
through me, and it took these two energetic circuits and it kind of connected them again, and then all of a sudden this beautiful energy was flowing all through my body.
Wow,
And
that's really amazing.
yeah, yeah. And this
And it could be that simple, right?
yeah, and that
But how
was
to do this without Iboga or Ibogaine? How to connect those two cables within us, right? Like we have no idea how which ones, how to even see them, right?
yeah. No, but basically this entity, this plant intelligence, it conveyed to me, hey, you human, I'm here to help you, but you know, you human, you're born, you live, you die, you forget, you are reborn, you live, you die, you forget. And I am this consciousness stream since eons, since hundreds of thousands of years. I am this plant spirit with a consecutive consciousness streams over millennia. And you can tap into my consciousness, or I can help you with my millennia old experience and teach you. And after it connected this cables or the energetic circuits, I felt really good, and it was like there was a trust established. Before I was kind of scared, what is this spiritual being doing there in my room? And then there was this trust established, and it then showed me a lot of things of my life and where I was not such a nice person. It was not just, it was very benevolent, but benevolent in a way that a stern grandfather tries benevolently to kind of set his grandson straight, who was not such a good grandson, so to say. So it showed me, hey, look, here you were not good, and this is a character trait that you might want to work on and do better in this aspect of your life, and so on. And that was really like being taken at my hand from this guide, ally, great brother or something, and it showed me how to improve my life and my character, and it also showed me aspects of what happened before where I was not such a good person, which resulted into me taking heroin basically. So there was a huge difference for me between Ibogaine hydrochloride, which has its benefits, which is really good in its own way, but the difference between Ibogaine hydrochloride and the Iboga root bark was really, really, really big for me.
Yeah, that's a really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing such a amazing, beautiful story. Did you have a chance to ask some questions that eternal being, eternal, or did you use that chance to somehow learn from that stream of consciousness?
Yeah, basically it fascinated me so much that it become kind of I met him quite often. It's like, you know, like with relationship with humans.
Oh, in couple sessions, not only in this one?
Yeah. I then, after this first session that I just described, I was so fascinated by it that I started to take Iboga full spectrum extract and Iboga root bark more or less regularly, like not weekly or monthly, but every now and then. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot like a teacher that with every session I could ask questions. He would come up with really pinpoint straight answers, but also he would give me homework. Like sometimes, for example, he gave me homework and told me, if you have not applied this into the physical world, into your daily life, don't even come back. And when I then came back without having this applied as he asked me to, it was more like a slap, like, I told you not to come back, bish, apply it, come back, then you can learn further. So it was kind of a learning experience with this spiritual being.
Can you give us an example, if it's not so private question of,
Sure.
of homework?
2 things. One was stop smoking for good, like stop smoking tobacco for good. I had, for example, this experience where I took Iboga and I had this tobacco habit, and I saw in this spiritual world like a huge tick, like this kind of disgusting insect being sitting on my shoulder and sucking like energy from me. And having taken Iboga, the Iboga spirit came and he kind of easily pulled away this tick and put it away and told me, hey, this is your tobacco habit. Every time you're smoking, you're basically feeding this energy that is not good for you, that is sucking your life force out. Don't smoke. And then come back when you stop smoking. And after a while, I again took Iboga. I mean, I was then not smoking for quite a while, but I then at some point started smoking again and took again Iboga. And he was a bit like, we can do this a lot of times, but don't smoke again. Then we don't have to work on this anymore. So he again helped me to get rid of tobacco and told me, now you have to implement like daily sport, get fit, get healthy, increase your personal energy by running, by exercising. And if I would come back to him without having applied what he asked me to apply, it was not that he was, or the experience was not horrible then, but it was just, this level, you didn't achieve the end of this level, so you cannot progress to the next level. So try again. And so like little things like this, also regarding nutrition, habits like meditation, yoga, these things were kind of progressively implied into my life with my Iboga journey.
So in general, the agenda was to have a way healthier lifestyle.
Yes.
Get rid of addictions.
Yes.
Yeah, I've shared with you personally that I just finished my 2-year journey with Kratom, which is also superbly powerful plant. Some people say it may even have 60 alkaloids. And I think it could be very beneficial. Do you have some experience with this plant or some knowledge about it?
I mean, I tried kratom a bit, but having had a quite strong opiate habit, I relatively soon realized that the kratom plant is rather possessive. So it doesn't like to let you go so easily, so quick. And I kind of felt after a couple days of daily kratom use and then stopping it, I was like thrown back into heavy heroin withdrawal memories. I didn't want to go there anymore. So I think for people who have, let's say, social anxiety and kind of something that they want to numb down, also people who need some motivation, kratom can be quite interesting and helpful, but it's too seductive, in my opinion, to be a real master plant or a powerful tool because it's heavily addictive.
It is, yeah, heavily addictive. It got a lot of benefits, and I think it could be really beneficial for a short period of time. Definitely not regular use, daily use. It took me, after 2 years, it took me 7 weeks to taper down, and it's very extremely challenging.
Yes.
And it requires a lot of hardcore discipline. You have to have a plan. If someone would like to know how I done it, you can guys contact me. I'll be more than happy to help you. And as I share with you personally, I'm planning to go for Iboga experience first time this September probably.
Nice.
And
Where are
I'm
you
very.
heading to?
I met this person that told you that Martin.
Yeah.
He was initiated by Bwiri tradition from Gabon. It took him 9 Iboga sessions down there to become. I'm not sure. Should we say certificate facilitator, trusted facilitator by Bwiri? My intuition is to do it with him, but I'm very open to ask you, like, who do you recommend, which places, because there's so many places out there. There are some places in Mexico, Costa Rica, some places in Europe.
Absolutely. So I don't want to recommend any special place in particular, but what I like to tell people is that there are risks involved with Ibogaine or Iboga that are much higher than with other psychedelics, and this specifically the heart. If you have some pre-existing heart conditions, planned Ibogaine near-death experience could potentially be an actual death experience if you have not tested your heart properly. So if you want to single out the different treatment centers, clinics, or providers, and you are aiming for a really high dose, it would be a huge red flag if the providers don't ask for ECG, like a previous heart screening. In Bwiti they don't do this usually, like it's something where they feel more guided by the spirit world, I'd say. But everything in a Western setting, in a good Western setting, providers, clinics should definitely incorporate a clinical test before going into the session or before even scheduling a session, because you might run around or walk through life without knowing that you have this pre-existing heart condition, and then when you take Iboga or Ibogaine, it might be too late if it's already in the system. So Iboga and Ibogaine can be actually administered super safe if the people who are administering know what they are doing. And to this knowledge, it should be definitely a proper screening, and also treatment centers should have a kind of an emergency plan, meaning there should be certain medications on site, there should be oxygen, there should be a defibrillator, there should be a heart monitor. All these things kind of separate responsible treatment facilities from irresponsible treatment facilities.
Yeah, thank you for these very important insights. And also, I'd like to ask you. I personally grown up in the culture of alcohol. Like I was born in Poland. There was a lot of alcohol usage in the culture, which was very common back then. Do you have some knowledge, experiences when you guys working with in GITA, how Ibogaine or Iboga could be beneficial for alcohol users, alcoholics? There's millions of people out there who are struggling. I don't know. There's many, like thousands of deaths every year caused directly, indirectly by alcohol, and I think personally that this is one of the worst drugs out there. Very dangerous substance.
Yeah, the easy access, I think, makes it so dangerous also. Basically, Ibogaine or Iboga is not the best to treat alcohol addiction because alcoholism is mediated via the GABA receptors in the brain. And Ibogaine doesn't work on the GABA receptors. So if you have a heavy alcoholic who drinks so much that if he would stop drinking, he would go into delirium, you cannot interact directly with Iboga or Ibogaine. It's mandatory, basically. It's needed that these people detox beforehand for 5 to 7 days, being off alcohol, and then going into Ibogaine. So what Ibogaine is doing neuropharmacologically is kind of, it enhances the neuroplasticity of the brain, especially the ventral tegmental areal of the brain, which is the rewardment system. It consists of dopamine neurons, and this is being destroyed by alcohol addiction. So if someone who used to be an alcohol addict kind of does the first few days of detox without Ibogaine, there are other things that help there. For example, Amanita muscaria, the muscimol, is very good. It works also on the GABA receptors. It kind of makes people sleep easier when they are on heavy alcohol withdrawal.
During those days of the detoxification, right?
Yes. There you can, with microdosing Amanita, you can slowly decrease the alcohol intake, and you kind of increase the Amanita muscaria intake, which is helping the people then to sleep and to not feel so super agitated. And then when they are on zero with the alcohol and they're still on the Amanita, then you can go in with the Ibogaine. And first, on the psychospiritual side, the Ibogaine basically gives you this psychedelic trip where you have insights into key positions of your life, what makes you to become addict, what parts are you running away from, etc. And then on the neuropharmacological side, Ibogaine enhances the neuroplasticity specifically also for the dopamine system, and it kind of it stimulates the production of GDNF, and GDNF is this peptide, a small protein, which basically stimulates the growth of dopamine neurons and the differentiation of dopamine neurons. And let's speak a bit in pictures. If you are an alcoholic, you're bombarding your rewardment system with alcohol, and your dopamine neurons degenerate a bit. And then when you stop drinking alcohol, you kind of have less hardware to feel this reward. And what Ibogaine can do, it's stimulating the growth of these dopamine neurons. So basically you not just relearn to be happy, but you get also the hardware again to feel happy. Because one of the problems of alcoholics is that they are often, when they detox, after 1-2 months, they are off alcohol, but because their rewardment system is so numbed down, so bombarded with alcohol, they don't feel this fine stimuli, this very like a nice social interaction, some chocolate or whatever, just doesn't provide this kind of happiness that a heavy load of alcohol would provide. And having had Iboga or Ibogaine kind of enhances the neuroplasticity of this rewardment system. And by this, you can learn to feel happy from very fine stimuli, which is usually very uneasy for ex-alcoholics. So Ibogaine and Iboga would be something that can be very, very helpful and useful about 1 to 2 weeks after the alcohol detox. But for the actual detox, Ibogaine and Iboga are not the first choice for alcohol. For, let's say, opiate addicts, it's really, really good in this sense also, because with opiate addicts, Ibogaine binds to the opiate receptors and therefore cuts the withdrawal relatively easy and painlessly. So it's a bit of different treatment protocols that you would apply for opiate addiction or alcohol addiction.
So besides Amanita muscaria, I had some personal experiences with this mushroom. It's really amazing. There is a lot of people microdosing it. I also try some large doses of this. Is a very dangerous and very challenging. It put me to a really hardcore session when I virtually died over there. Very challenging mushroom. But besides microdosing Amanita muscaria, what would you recommend for people who like to detox before going for Iboga or Ibogaine? People who are alcohol drinking, drinking alcohol for struggling with this beast as well.
Yeah, if you look more at the naturopathic side of things, there is, for example, passion flower, passiflora, passion flower extraction. If you find a very high concentrated extract of this is also kind of taking away anxiety. It can also help for people who want to detox benzodiazepines. Then also there is something, it's DHHB, it's dihydrohonochiol B. It's basically a molecule coming from the magnolia plant. These very beautiful flowers, the magnolia, they are used in traditional Chinese medicine for sleeping tea. The root bark, but the bark of the magnolia tree is in traditional Chinese medicine a plant that kind of calms you and relaxes you and takes away anxiety. And so some research has been done, and they have showed that DHH-B, dihydrohonochiol B, is basically the molecule which provokes this from the plant. Also magnoliol and honochiol are helping, but you can find these magnolia extracts, and you can, if you really look in a full naturopathic approach, a combination of this passiflora or also DHHB, magnolia extract, and muscimol can help quite good. But it's more...
Muscimol is it's related to Amanita muscaria, right?
Yes. In the Amanita muscaria, you have like the muscarine, muscimol, and you have the ibotenic acid. And if you get the Amanita muscaria mushroom, you have like these three things, and the ibotenic acid is more something that activates you. You know, like the berserkers, like this warrior feeling, where they, in Northern Europe, they used to say that they ate these amanitas for going into war, warrior drug, and that's more the ibotenic acid part of the mushroom. But you can convert this ibotenic acid super easy, basically at home, just over 80 degrees. You need to dry it, and then this ibotenic acid gets converted to muscimol, and the muscimol is more downing, the soothing, the relaxing part, which is what you're looking for in alcohol withdrawal, because people always get super agitated when they're in the alcohol, and the muscimol helps people to sleep during alcohol detox. It calms them, it takes away the anxiety. So if you just give Amanita muscaria in an alcohol detox, might not yield as good results as if you convert all the ibotenic acid before to the muscimol.
And from your experience, how efficient Ibogaine is referring to alcohol addiction versus, for example, opioid addiction?
I treated not too much alcoholics. All the people that I treated not too much only alcoholics. Usually the people I treated, alcohol is there as a part, but they are all like on cocaine, on speed, on crack, and also alcoholics. So it's pretty hard to say because most of the people that I have treated so far are somewhat of polytoxicomaniacs. They don't have an only alcohol habit or an only crack habit or an only heroin habit, but they take
There's many substances, many molecules, right?
yeah, many things in the
In their
mix.
life.
So generally, we have good experiences if the sessions are prepared good. As I said before, there used to be this kind of romanticized view of Ibogaine. You take once Ibogaine and everything is good, and that's just not the case. It needs to be prepared very well. Like a good Ibogaine session should be prepared 2-3 months in advance. And in this 2-3 months of preparation for the Ibogaine session with counseling, coaching, therapists, it should be worked out, the after plan, because the Ibogaine session itself provokes this window of opportunity. You have this kind of a reset in the brain, and then the days and weeks or month even after the Ibogaine session are very crucial how you use them, because your brain is, let's say, like virgin or again or something in this direction, and you have this enhanced neuroplasticity, so you want this couple month, best case scenario, after an Ibogaine session very thoroughly planned, and you don't want to do this in the environment where you have lived your addiction. So if you take someone without preparation out of his habitat, you just give him Ibogaine, and a week later you just put him right back where he came from, it's most likely that he sooner or later will relapse. And you have much better results if you prepare such an Ibogaine session properly, and then not going right back in the natural environment, so to say, after an Ibogaine session, but going maybe to a farm, working there, going to a meditation center, volunteering in a yoga hall, doing Thai boxing, or whatever is resonating with someone, but somewhere where this person relearns life, relearns, so to say, being happy without drugs. And it's much easier to do this in an environment where you don't know where you get the drugs. So we are now in Europe trying to create these aftercare places where people can go after an Ibogaine session, where they have a healthy environment, which is maybe not totally drug free, so to say, because we thought about incorporating also mushroom sessions, sweat lodges, a lot of body work, things like this to connect with nature, so to say. So those centers are really crucial, I think, for a long-term good outcome.
Wow, such a beautiful mission. I love that. You mentioned mushrooms. Yeah, I was about to ask you. There's a lot of people out there microdosing right now psilocybin mushrooms. Do you think it's a good idea to microdose, or in general, use psilocybin before or after Ibogaine sessions?
I would recommend the people to rather microdose Iboga after an Ibogaine session than psilocybin. It may be a bit of a matter of taste, like some people feel really drawn to mushrooms, and sure, if they want to, but I usually recommend people to microdose Iboga after a higher dose of Iboga, because Iboga has this quite long blood plasma half-life, well, not Ibogaine, but the metabolite noribogaine. Ibogaine gets metabolized in your liver to noribogaine, and noribogaine has this really long blood plasma half-life, and noribogaine also has these neuroplasticity enhancing effects. So if you ramp up your blood plasma level of noribogaine with taking a larger dose, and then just with microdoses, you keep up the level a bit. You have this prolonged neuroplasticity. So I recommend rather to microdose Ibogaine or Iboga after a higher dose of Iboga.
Is it a good idea to microdose Iboga before the flat session?
I rather, people that work with me, I tell them better stop microdosing Iboga about 2 to 3 weeks before the higher dose of Iboga, because it accumulates in the system, and then you already go with an unknown amount of Iboga in your system into the Iboga session. And the people who do the Iboga session, they often precisely calculate how much Iboga they give to you. And if you have already this base level of Iboga, whatever they calculate might be wrong, because it adds up. So it's good to, in order to keep the therapist or the clinic, the treatment provider, on the safe side, it's good to go there without much Iboga in the system. If the treatment provider guides you and is the same treatment provider that gives you the larger dose, then he knows what he is doing, and then it's fine. If he has an overview of what you have been taken. But if you just do it yourself and then you go to an Iboga treatment facility and they don't know what you have taken and how much you have taken, it makes it much more difficult for them to dose you precisely or correctly. So you want to have maybe 3 weeks or so not microdosing in your own terms with Iboga before going to such a treatment center.
Yes, it sounds like a very logical insight. Let's come back to GITA, to the Global Iboga Therapy Alliance. Would you be so kind and tell us a little bit more about this organization, what you guys are currently working on? How did you get into that organization?
So, well, GITA exists already since, let's say, around 2010. But then around 2016-17, there was a change in the people who were running it. It's basically a volunteer-based association, so nobody of us gets money. So it somehow went a bit dormant. And then at some point, me and 3-4 friends, Claire Wilkins, Jeremy Boyd, wanted to resurrect it. And so we are still doing so. Since it's voluntarily run, we are still not in our 100% running. Let's see where it's going. What we are currently doing, or what I am currently doing a lot, is working with Parkinson patients. We are trying to set up a clinical trial in Zurich and in Austria, and Switzerland and in Austria, where we basically treat Parkinson patients with low doses of Ibogaine or Iboga, depending on the preference of the patient. And Parkinson patients generally are older demography. There are some younger ones that have it in their early 50s, 60s, but these are rather young cases of Parkinson's. Usually the pronounced symptoms of Parkinson's are there when people are, let's say, 70 or 80. We don't want to full flood or give 70 or 80-year-old people who have had never any contact with any kinds of drugs a full-blown, several days lasting near-death experience. What we are now exploring more is how to make Iboga accessible with microdosing to a broader demography. And the same thing that I basically touched upon before regarding to addiction, this neuroplasticity enhancing qualities, specifically on the dopamine metabolism, are also interesting for Parkinson clients, because Parkinson patients also have a loss of dopamine neurons, or the major pathophysiological processes is a loss of dopaminergic neurons and dysfunction of dopamine signaling. That's why they start shaking and the movement doesn't work as they want. And this neuroplasticity enhancing qualities of Iboga, you can access them also in quite low doses, which are not overwhelmingly psychedelic. So we are now working with older Parkinson clients to kind of, I don't want to say heal, but we want to alleviate the symptoms of Parkinson's. So what we are doing is we try to successfully sometimes increase their quality of life with Iboga microdosing, which is super interesting. We have some people who weren't able to walk who are now riding a bike again. We had some people who were close to suicide and are now happier or not close to suicide. Still, it's not a cure. It's not this magic pill that you take it and you're all of a sudden healthy again. But it gives them a quite pronounced increase of quality of life. So people, one client, she couldn't go to town alone by herself. She couldn't walk so good. And then after a while of Iboga microdosing, she is now riding the tube in London again, and she is basically walking around, doing her grocery shoppings alone. So it really increases her independence and freedom. And we had quite a few of those cases. So what is the interesting or the difficult part of it is it doesn't help for everyone. And Parkinsonism is something that is rather difficult to say where it's coming from. There is some Parkinsonism that is genetically determined. You could have just because your father or your grandfather had Parkinson's, if you have the same genetic disposition, you might also get Parkinson's. There is Parkinson's which is caused by environmental toxins, heavy metal toxin, mercury toxin, intoxication, things like this. There are, for example, boxers or Thai boxers or just bare knuckle boxers, all people who get a lot of hits on their head have an increased likability to get Parkinson's. So we try to work with all Parkinson cases. Some people respond like miraculously, and some people don't respond at all. And now the interesting thing is how to kind of predict who is going to respond positively and who is not going to respond. So this is basically the tasks of the future research, to know why some people react so positively on it and some people don't.
Wow, that's fascinating. Do you see some other benefits from Iboga Ibogaine for elderly? My dad, he's 75, and he asked me recently, because I talk with him a lot about these amazing molecules, psychedelics. How he asked me like directly, how can I, being 75, he's got some small issues with consuming, too much sugar in his life, and do you see some other ways, benefits for elderly?
So a few, yes. But I would always go for people over 70, 75 without already an established experience base in the multidimensional molecule realm. If people don't have this, I would only go for microdosing for a start. But the thing with microdosing for Iboga is it has this really broad spectrum. Traditionally in Africa, they don't really have a drug problem there. There's no heroin or no cocaine around so much. So, but they still do microdosing traditionally, and this also is applicable to elderly people, because in Africa they say microdosing stimulates it, so it makes you happier, it makes you more energetic. For example, there's this anecdote how the use of Iboga was super suppressed by the colonists, but the Germans built a railway from Douala to Yaoundé in South Cameroon, and they saw how the people who took Iboga work harder, better, stronger, and are more happy while working. So they actually encouraged even the use of Iboga there, because the people worked better. And if you kind of translate this to elderly people, you can give elderly people smaller doses of Iboga. Iboga, well, or Ibogaine, works as an SSRI, meaning it increases your serotonin levels in the neurosynaptic cleft, which makes you just slightly happier. People walk around with a brighter mood. Also, Iboga is kind of optimizing the energetic metabolism of erythrocytes, of your red blood cells. So people feel that they're more energized. It works as a pro-antioxidative, meaning itself is not an antioxidative, but it stimulates the production of antioxidative enzymes. And all this together basically results in elderly people feeling a bit more happy, being more energized, and having more motivation to do things. But you need to find the sweet spot, and the sweet spot is quite different inter-individually. It might change a bit. So usually I recommend to start with very, very low doses, but daily. And then if after 1 week nothing happens, you can increase the dose a bit and keep this slightly higher but still low dose for 1 week and so on. At some point people start feeling how they have this brighter mood, a bit more motivation to do things, a bit more aware, centered in the moment. So microdosing is something that definitely helps elderly people. For example, also people with CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, which now a lot of people have post-corona, or also the post-COVID syndrome they call it also. So we had also good results with elderly people who kind of felt always super tired after their corona, and with some microdosing of Iboga, they felt again more motivation. And I think this applies also to people without CFS.
So by very small dose, how many milliliters or milligrams do you mean, like for microdosing?
It depends a lot on what substance you have, but if I refer to pure Ibogaine hydrochloride, 99.9% pharmaceutically pure Ibogaine hydrochloride, it would be somewhere between 20 and 40 milligrams per day, maybe 50 milligrams per day, something like this.
And a couple times a day, like two
no,
three times a day?
One time a day, best in the morning. Best in the morning, because some people feel so activated that if they take it after noon or after 2 p.m. or so, they might not sleep. But this 50, let's say 20 to 50 milligrams of Ibogaine hydrochloride, if you get root bark, if you buy root bark off the internet, this root bark might have anywhere between 2 and 10% of alkaloid content. So it varies quite a lot with root bark you buy online, because you don't know how strong it is.
Yeah, so there's a trick.
Yes.
I'm still thinking about this Groot, this person you mentioned. It's kind of fascinating. You said, you human, you are being born, you die, or you forget. Did you have a chance to, because that's what's fascinating me probably the most, it's the nature of life, like what kind of force is generating this universe. Did you have a chance to ask this being, this stream of consciousness, why is it like this? Why we humans, why this cycle looks like this? Some kind of like a deeper philosophical questions, meanings.
So I didn't ask precisely the being this, but somehow the being made me, or in the whole process while having this relationship with this ally, I started to look much deeper into Buddhism and also into yogic practices, and I found a lot of what I experienced with Iboga. I first had quite an extensive range of Iboga experiences, and then started to look into different philosophies and everything. And I found a lot of explanations for what I experienced there in Buddhist cosmology, or also yogic, like the Yoga Sutras, but also mainly Buddhist cosmology, because there are these different planes of existence, which you can experience firsthand when traveling with Iboga. And in some Buddhist traditions, they have it very clearly mapped out, these different levels of existence, like the human level, but below the human level there are these hungry ghosts and animal and hell realms, and above the human levels there are these devas and these different hierarchic orders of devas and brahmas, brahmanic, like godlike beings. And with Iboga I could kind of, without knowing about those existence planes, I first were thrown into them and I could travel around in them, and then afterwards reading these then explanations. Before it was just theory for me, but with the Iboga kind of experienced it firsthand and kind of felt that they get very close to what I experienced.
Was this being interested in learning something from you?
No, not too much. No. It was it was more like I felt like a 3-year-old that is being taken at the hand and being shown like a whole new world by an 80-year-old guy who already has seen it all and knows it all. So I felt it being much superior to me. I felt it just very benevolent, but more like playful with me. More like, hey, okay, I'm gonna play a bit with this human, and I'm gonna show this human how the human can improve his life, but not really that I could teach this being something. Not at all.
Mm-hmm. But in general, it was very friendly, very helpful. Do you think
I think
this
also
is
that this might be a personal thing with psychedelics? You know, that people say that even Sasha Shulgin said that each of his new creations, each of his baby psychedelics, so to say, had a personal character, and I think this is even much more true for these master plants, as peyote has its own character, and Iboga has its own character, and ayahuasca has its own character. And I think some persons work better with, let's say, ayahuasca, click better, and some persons work better with Iboga, and some persons work better with whatever, salvia or peyote. So I think it's not. I also heard Iboga to some people being kind of mischievous, and they didn't like the humor of Iboga so much. So Iboga has sometimes a twisted, dark humor, but I can work with it. But I also know people who don't like this so much, the way of how Iboga teaches. So I think it's it's very benevolent is maybe because I click with it, and other people might not click with it.
Yeah, we record a lot of podcasts with comedians, with stand-uppers, and they have a very twisted sense of humor. So actually, I love it.
Yes.
And how do you see the future of Iboga, of legalization and accessibility? I've seen this podcast with Joe Rogan. There was
with Brian and Rick.
Perry Brian and Rick Perry and Brian Hubbard. Yeah, it was really very touchy conversation, very powerful.
Also, introduce our work on the when they talk about the Parkinson's client. Brian and Rick talk about one of my clients, and we had a meeting with Rick Perry, my client, and Brian, and also the mother of the client, and they wanted to see and talk to him firsthand, and after that they basically also explained this meeting and the video of my client in the Joe Rogan experience.
And then so coming back to the question, do you think that relatively soon Ibogaine will become broadly accessible in Europe, in States, and other parts of the world. And are you guys also working within GITA to help this process?
Yes, so I think in the United States we have now a very unique moment where also with the politics there and where a lot of things seem to be possible that before were not really possible. So I think they will gain a huge momentum. In Europe, I mean in Germany, Austria, in Czech Republic and Holland, Iboga is legal. We don't have here an illegality problem. It's just very niche, it's very fringe. With now people like Rick Perry, and then just recently there was the thing in the Wall Street Journal, and I think it's going to be, or it's at the tipping point of going mainstream, and it's definitely super interesting time to be involved in this. We are trying to help this process, facilitate this process, and I would love to see it, or it's what we are working on actually, to be in a very safe setup, because you can make it safe, but to have it as an holistic experience where people have several month lasting treatment process with it. So a friend of me, he is having a clinic in Czech Republic, a psychedelic clinic, being now the first psychedelic clinic in Europe where they actually have hacked, so to say, the psychedelic use into the world of insurances. So the
Oh, wow.
the health insurance system in Europe is pretty interesting, and the interesting part of this in Czech Republic is that if you have a diagnosis that is eligible for treatment with psilocybin or ketamine, health insurance now pays for these treatments. So we have now some people in our field with GITA that have quite good connections in this world, and a best case scenario would be that basically a full treatment scope where Ibogaine is a part, a modality of the treatment, will be covered by health insurances. This would be our long-term goal. But let's see. I hope we can achieve this soon.
So, do you have this hope that broad access to Ibogaine may drastically change collective human conditions and consciousness, and also the health condition of humanity? Because right now we have this, like in States, I think 70% of people are overweight and obesity, and those issues with consuming too much sugar and junk food, and people are depressed and got a lot of anxiety and superbly tired and burnt out. It doesn't look good for now, to put it gently.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, I mean it would be beautiful. Let's say I grew a bit out of this attitude that let's just give the people a lot of medicine, psychedelic medicine, and everything will be fine, because this is kind of I saw it not happen this way. It's hard to say. I don't know if Iboga would be a catalyst for change, but I think it would be beautiful if it would help, at least in this direction. I mean, if a lot of people would take it, I think there would be definitely some change, societal change. But what I saw in the psychedelic world now is, in the last years, the psychedelic world got very much, eaten up by capitalism. Like a lot of these in the beginning.
Yeah, I got your point. Yeah.
Yeah, beginning of or let's say that from 2000 to 2010, there was a certain idealism in the psychedelic world that I experienced, and then from 2015 or even from 2010 to 2020, it got really eaten up by capitalists, and it was not so much more the how can we change the global consciousness for a better, but it was much more how can we capitalize on this? How can we get a lot of bucks out of this? And so I felt a bit disillusionized in the last years of what happened in the psychedelic bubble. But still, I hope that for sure, if we can kind of target the right person, some people I know, they like to target more higher up people, try to hack it into the banking system and see how we could basically change the minds of policymakers with psychedelics so that the policymakers start rethink. But looking at the last, let's say, 15 years, I'm slightly disillusionized.
Mm. And what do you think about the idea, like big pharmaceutical companies are trying to create like a kind of a drug based on psychedelics, Iboga as well? You just take the pill without all these negative effects. Do you think it's a good direction?
So my personal opinion is there is the Iboga plant, and I am utmost grateful for this plant spirit that opened me up into the spirit world, which is connected to the Iboga shrub, to the living entity, to the plant. And I think it worked so well for me. So I saw it also work very well for others. On the same hand, there is something, I understand that people try to improve on what nature gives you there, but my heart beats more with the people who say, hey, this is something that is from nature there, to reconnect with nature, to open up the spirit world of the Bwiti. In Bwiti they say the Iboga plant, the Iboga shrub, is just the gate into the forest. So if you take the Iboga, you see all the different forest spirits, you see how to live in harmony, in symbiosis with the forest. So taking now this out of there is for sure, I mean, it's super interesting from the scientific viewpoint. It's what all these different 2-oxa, Ibogaine and tabernantolog and whatever is going on there. It's super interesting, and if it helps people, good. Sure, why not? I personally love the plant spirit, and I'm more drawn to this side. But it both has its pro and cons. I couldn't say either or.
Yeah, well, I think we're on the very same page here. And what would you say? What are the biggest myths of Ibogaine you have encountered in your work out there, which may cause
like
maybe negative PR? Yeah, like what the culture, like cultural myths, you know, some kind of misinformation which may not necessarily reflect the beauty and the pureness of Iboga spirit.
I mean, this what I said before, that often people say or see Iboga as this magic bullet. You just take Iboga once and you're healed. This was a bit of the narrative in the early days of the Iboga Western movement, which is just not true. It's like it's an help. It helps you to change something. Another thing is maybe the death. There are every now and then happening some Iboga death, and that's when quite uninformed providers go, and it often happens that people take Iboga once or twice and then come out of it and think, I need to give this to other people, and do that without having themselves educated properly. So those resulting death cases is not the best PR for Iboga. They are preventable, and that's why I think the symbiosis of Western world and traditional African ways or traditional African shamanism is something that is so needed, because in Ganga, it's what in Bwiti is a shaman. Once in Ganga told me that basically we as Westerners cannot copy and paste Bwiti into the Western world. It just doesn't work for Western minds the way it works for Gabonese or Cameroonian or minds, because there it's embedded in a total different societal context. So for example, in Africa, schizophrenia would be the implication, or psychosis would be the indication for taking a higher dose of Iboga. In the Western world, it would be an exclusion criteria. So some clinics will not treat you if you have a history of schizophrenia or psychosis. And I think the point here is how it's embedded in society. In Africa, if there's someone being initiated, the whole village knows what is going on, and everybody of the village will treat these persons the weeks and months after the initiation accordingly. In the Western world, we had people coming out of an Iboga treatment, having talked to their dead grandfather, going to their therapists after a Iboga session who was not Iboga informed, and then being pathologized, like, what, you talked to your dead grandfather? Here, you need antipsychotics. And that's kind of... we cannot take really what is happening in Africa and just put it into the Western world. We are now at a super interesting point where we kind of shape and develop how we can incorporate this type of knowledge and this type of wisdom and healing into the Western world, but redefine it a bit so it's kind of digestible for Western minds. So I think that's maybe the most interesting things for the next few years.
So you mentioned when we spoke privately before we started recording that you were initiated by Bwiti
Yes.
as well in Gabon. Would you be some kind of elaborate a little bit on their tradition and also how this process goes?
Yes, sure. So I'm initiated into the Sumba Fang tradition. You know, Bwiti is the overarching, but within the Bwiti there are different branches, different tribes practicing different branches. So I'm initiated in the Sumba Fang tradition. And for me it was very important that I am initiated into a tradition where they don't do animal sacrifice. So I found luckily this tradition. And the whole process was like, you have a 7-day preparation where over 7 days you take a bath 5 times a day. You have these different plants, like 20, 30 different plants, and you take this plant bath and then you get enemas, and then they come with this special smoothie and you drink it, and then you run to the toilet like 10 times or so. And so you're really cleaned, like inside, outside, everything. And during this cleaning process, it's not just physical cleaning, but they also tell you, when you do the plant bath, think about what you want to get rid of, think about what you want to invite in your life, think about everything that needs to be washed out, and so on. So in this time you don't have contact with anyone much, you don't have your cell phone, you don't have books to read so much or so. So it's really a very introspective and reflective phase. And then at some point they told me I should watch out for every sign that is happening when I walk through the jungle, when I'm there. And at some point this huge scarabaeus came, like it was like a tiny helicopter or a drone. It was really loud bug, flying and circling around me and then leaving again. So I told them, yeah, there was this bug, and then they were like, yeah, that's the sign of the spirits, now you can eat Iboga. And then they started to feed me a bit Iboga, and then there is this still 1-2 days more where I was given tiny amounts of Iboga, or I mean, it was not just the microdose, I was feeling it, but not the flood dose. And in this time there is a ceremony of intention, there is a ceremony of the fire, there are all these different ceremonies. And then at some point when they think you're ready now, then they paint you, and before the painting, you make again a very thorough plant bath. You go to one of the streams there and get washed there, and then you paint you, and then they smudge you, and then they give you the huge dose of Iboga. And from that moment onwards, I only remember like fragments of what happened in the physical world, because I was kind of traveling also in the astral world then already. But the large dose of Iboga I was fed not in the temple, but a couple of 100 meters away from the temple, somewhere in the jungle. And I took there a large dose, and then I was brought to some kind of tiny little hut made out of banana leaves. And there my first part of the journey started. I puked there then, and after I puked, I was considered ready to go into the temple. And there I was taken into the large temple, where basically I was lying on a mattress for some days and with a mosquito net, and they were playing their music for some days. It was quite intense, quite interesting experience.
Do you remember what happened during this session? What was it the same like you were doing it at your home? Did that Groot being also came, or that was completely different?
It was slightly different. The interesting thing was that when I went to this village, the chief or one of the persons who was kind of in charge there, and I talked to him, and he closed his eyes and he kind of leaned back a bit, and he came back before I did the initiation, and he told me, he told me he knows you quite good. So when I also traveled around in Gabon, and these people usually knew that I know Iboga quite good without knowing me. It's just they had some contact to this being, and they said, okay, we know that he knows you. And in my experience, it was different than at home, because I mean, it was the home of the plant with all the shrubs around me. So, but I had already worked through quite a lot of personal stuff. So this was then more me exploring the astral worlds, the other planes, than kind of tidying up my intrapersonal kerfuffle.
But like you said, that Iboga spirit is a he. When I was recording a podcast with Martin Hala, he said that Iboga, it's both. It's he and she. That the spirit of Iboga is both.
That is both. I think it's very true. I think.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree that it's both, because I saw it shapeshift. I think if the Iboga spirit kind of visually makes itself visible to you, it chooses a form that is the easiest to connect to you. So I felt like the Iboga spirit kind of karmically x-rays you, or multidimensionally looks into your brain, and it can take forms or shapes, whatever is best in this moment for you to get the teaching. So it shape-shifted sometimes in old friends, and at the beginning I thought, oh wow, it's now the spirit of the friend here, and then it shape-shifted it again, and then no, okay, it's the Iboga spirit trying to communicate something to me. And I think the form the Iboga spirit is taking is the form that is best suited to convey a certain teaching to you. So I don't think it's classically a he or a she. It's like a neutral, non-binary plant intelligence. But for me, it was more often a he, and I connected more with the male side of it. So I say he, but it's an it maybe. Or they.
Got it. Tobias, how much time do you have yet today for a conversation?
I leave in about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes.
Okay, you gotta go. So I thought we can take a short break, but that's fine. I'm fascinating, but by you know that what Iboga is like. Maybe at the end, I would like to ask you, and what is that purpose. I'm trying to how to rephrase that question. Like Brian Hubbard said at Joe Rogan's, that this is a gift from God to cure us, to help us flourish.
So far, I totally agree.
and that that some things on this planet got really messed up, and humanity is sick, and nature or God or Absolute is trying to help us, to give us a tool to fix all those aspects. Would you agree with that? What is your understanding of dancing with this amazing plant for so many years?
Absolutely, I think it's a kind of an let's say agent of healing, and not just agent of healing of, let's say, addiction or something, but I realized how addiction was just a symptom of something much deeper rooted, and I think Iboga is basically exactly this, like a gift from above, to realize, to help us to self-realize, to gain understanding on where we took a wrong turn, and also showing ways how we could kind of set things straight. I love Brian's notion about it being a gift from God to change us, to heal us.
And what would be your message to someone who is listening, watching us right now, and got very fascinated by this conversation, by but what you were talking about, Iboga? How the one can start that journey? How to get into this universe?
I think it's very crucial, especially with Iboga, to do a lot of personal research. Like, don't just haste into it. Like, don't take it too fast. Like, first do your personal research and explore a lot what is resonating with you, and kind of follow your intuition. Don't just sign up for the next best thing that sounds maybe good or is especially cheap, but rather go for a longer research period and get many different opinions, and look at the different news groups or forums or whatever to get a broad scope of opinions, and make your decisions accordingly to a broader education.
So a lot of research. If someone would like to get some help, some insights, can they contact your organization? Do you guys help with some kind of guidance?
Yeah, we don't provide any services that you can buy, but anybody who writes us will get some kind of answer if we can help. So we do not, GITA does not do Iboga treatments, GITA does not do consultations, but we can point out to providers, we can help you, or we can tell you where to find potential providers, things like this. Yes, if you have any questions regarding Iboga, you can write us, and we might answer, not immediately, but we usually always answer.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's super cool. Also, I would like to mention at the end that as a Beyond the Courage, we support this amazing foundation called Gift of Heart, which is based here in Chicago. Over almost 40 years, a group of amazing people helped to save the life of almost 1,500 kids. We'll place all the links in the description. Please support. Is there anything else you would like to add, Tobias, today, to wrap up our conversation? Thank you so much. It was a really fascinating conversation.
Yes, currently I feel I have said basically everything I want to say, so thank you very much for the opportunity to share. It's always a pleasure to educate and share about Iboga.
Okay, thank you so much. Our guest today was Tobias Erny from GITA. We'll place all the links in the description. If someone would like to contact you, what's the best way to contact you? Is email or just go to the website?
Yes, email. I'll give you the email, or I can say it now, tobias@ibogaalliance.org. And that's the email where you can contact me.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Tobias Erny, fascinating conversation. My name is Robert Kainis. It was another Beyond the Courage podcast. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day and magical life.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Tobias, just one more question. I know that you are going. We always let me stop the recordings. The files can upload.